So you guys are probably asking, where's the mean? Where's the mean? Change plans. He's a young man. He had to attend a wedding, so he really wanted to be here. I asked Rohan, or maybe Rohan asked me. I forget. I think it was I asked Rohan if he'd come through, and I still got Rohan. If that's okay with everybody, I think you guys will be all right. I think Rohan more than fits the bill. So before we start, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad to finally, get it kicking with you. We've been trying to get this for a little bit, but yeah, I'm happy, and I'm definitely happy to be here with you.
It's I don't know, man. It's been a weird season so far because it's like there's really good stuff about the 49ers, like their defense or whatever. But then there's the Trey Lance situation that happened when he broke his ankle, of course. And then there's all the injuries right now. And I figure injuries is where we'll start it. 49ers injury woes. Here we go again. It's every year, pretty much. Seems like every year. I'm actually pretty angry about it. I've been trying to keep it to myself, but man, it's to me, there has to be something behind it, right? There has to be a reason why they're always hurt. It can't just be every year we have bad luck. There's got to be some tangible explanation. What's your take, not only on this year's crop of injuries, but just this reoccurring nightmare that we seem to deal with every year?
It's interesting. I feel like it's a different problem every year. Obviously, there are freak injuries. You can attribute some to turf, but when we look at it, the 49ers don't play on turf as much as other teams because their normal home stadium is what's up, but their normal home stadium is on grass, right? So what is it? It is a practice regimen. Is it something like that? A trend I noticed earlier, very like in the offseason and training camp, and then in the injuries that accumulated in that area, and then towards the beginning of the season, several 49ers were getting injured several 49ers, though, my bad, were getting injured on rest days, and then the day, not on rest days, but the day after rest days, be it because they were ramping up too much or for whatever reason. But that was a trend. And then when Kyle Shanahan was asked about that, he said he was going to try and figure out a solution. I don't know if that trend is continuing to stand right now. Obviously, we don't get the full details of when these injuries occur at times, and so sometimes that information might be good to know. But I know that was a trend earlier in the season and in the offseason for some of them. Jimmy Ward's hamstring injury is a clear example of that. That happened, I believe, on a Saturday or on a Sunday after that the previous day was off for the 49ers. So that was something, but overall, it's just a team that has been ravaged by injuries over the past couple of years, and it's unfortunate that it continues to happen.
There's a lot of, depending on who you ask or whose opinion you, even when you don't ask them, especially if it's on social media, a lot of people will tell you it's they're practiced too hard or they have the bad training staff, and that's the reason. I remember Grant for a while was saying they needed to drink more milk at one point, which I thought was an unbelievably ballsy, awesome, kind of just like, because, Kyle is such a hard ass, he didn't want to hear that kind of statement. But to me, it's hard sometimes to get excited because there's always this feeling of like every single game, who's the next guy to drop? Who's the next big chip on the board to drop? Like we can't really withstand on the defensive side any more guys to really go down. I mean, we've already got 3/4 of our defensive line down, possibly all four. I guess it's a questionable for Nick Bosa for Sunday. And then, Samson Ebukam had some issues. And I guess he's going to make it. But between that and then, you get all this talk about them being such an elite defense and getting all excited about that. And I felt like I'm sick of the broadcasters saying it now because it's like, dude, every week that they come up and they have that graphic on the screen, no matter if it's like Fox or Amazon or whatever, like we're just whittling away at the amount of truth to that statement, and now because it's so many different guys, so it's hard. I watch games with a sense of almost like dread in my stomach. I don't know if you're the same. Do you get a little bit nervous like every time they pan to a guy getting up off the ground, or
for me it's like I don't really think in that way anymore. But for me, it's just like it's unfortunate for the player, regardless if it's this team or the other team. For Mosley's injury, it definitely sucked. I think the biggest one that really hurt last year with Verrett. My initial reaction was 49ers can't win a Super Bowl if they don't have Jason Verrett on that team. And he tore his ACL because of how important he was. D'Amico Ryans did a phenomenal job. And obviously my reaction changed after the way D'Amico Ryans adjusted. But Emmanuel Mosley's injury was another one of those big shockers. This one, obviously, when you think about it objectively, you don't. We'll talk about it in a minute, actually, when we talk about the cornerbacks. But you have Jason Verrett, won't be there this Sunday. But in a way, the 49ers had their insurance policy with the Jason Verrett, which is why I actually praise the way that they handled this offseason. They have insurance policies at several positions of positions that people question their depth at. They have several positions. They're one of the deepest teams in the NFL. And so, should an injury happen to Charvarius Ward, who missed 4 games in 2022, or Emmanuel Mosley, who has missed several games in each of the last 2 seasons, you have a prime insurance policy, and it's a player who can play at a fairly high level when healthy in Jason Verrett.
Just want to say hi to the chat real quick here. Of course, we have Brian Culp, who came in way before the stream to say, "What up, faithful?" Hit that like button, everyone. I appreciate that. Brian Culp again said hello to all of us and to the 49ers. Damian Lee was in here. He says, "Let's go red and gold." We got Raphael 562, who's a very, very common participator in the chat. Says, "What's up, Aaron and Rohan and everyone?" Amin, I guess he's on his phone at the wedding, saying, "I'm sorry I can't make it, Aaron, in the chat, but I know Aaron and Rohan will."
Well, we won't kill it. We'll jill it, though.
We'll jill it together. Oh, my God, my readings. Either way, and have a great stream without me. Go Niners. I need to get glasses, guys. I'm totally struggling here. 49ers throwback, always in the chat, always on Twitter. Thanks for popping in as usual. Alan, I don't think I've ever seen you before, and if you have commented, I apologize. He says, "Hello, Aaron and Rohan. How are you guys doing on this Friday night?" I'm doing fantastic. I could
too.
not be better. I'm a little sore from work, but other than that, I'm all right. Platform 246. He says, "What's happening, Aaron? Guest, faithful, and folks, Niner gang, or don't bang." Exactly. I actually am hoping to have him on the NWO stream on Monday. I have invited him, so hopefully that works out. I always like bringing people on and adding a different voice to the discussion when it's a collaborative effort. I think it's good. It keeps things fresh. Gets people interested. Like, oh, I know this guy. So I can't wait for that. Just waiting for money to come. Hopefully we're coming off of a win and we can all be happy. And because if it's one of those like really spazzy, angry streams that I'd like to have once in a while, then it might not be as fun. Bashar is in here. He says, "I'm going to close my stream. I don't have enough viewers." Yeah, I know. My viewers have been really bad lately, but oh well. And he says, "I'll be there. Thank you." Yeah, I can't wait for that. So we're talking about the injuries here. And I guess the main question with all these injuries is who's going to replace Mosley? I guess Verrett isn't ready. From a lot of people are saying he had some soreness, which, I mean, I had surgery twice on my shoulder, and anytime I did any rehab, I was extremely sore after. So
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be caught up in the moment and say he's got to go, he's done, woo, like everybody is. And I could be that guy too sometimes, depending if I'm just sick of seeing a guy get hurt, like a Javon Kinlaw and stuff, especially with all the drama that happened in the offseason. But as far as Verrett, I want him to be out there when he's ready. So take him out of the equation for right now. You have Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore, and Samuel Womack as your possibilities on the outside. Mm-hmm. Who's your guy?
I think somewhat of a clear indication of where the 49ers could be heading. You could go back to last week and you could see what the 49ers did once Emmanuel Mosley exited the game. I didn't necessarily catch on immediately. I didn't really pay attention. But when I watched the film again, what the 49ers did was they shifted Diamondo Lenore to the outside and placed Samuel Womack at nickelback for the remainder. It was like 4 or so minutes left in that game. They placed that formation, and then after the Mosley injury, they played Ward one more drive, and then they pulled Ward as well for that final drive and put Ambry Thomas on the outside. But to me, what I believe will happen is Diamondo Lenore will likely get the start on the outside. Samuel Womack will likely get the start in the nickel. But the biggest not X factor, but the biggest question would be Dante Johnson. Me, personally, I believe Dante Johnson will be elevated from the practice squad and be active for this game without Jimmy Ward, who has already been ruled out with that broken hand he suffered on the opening kickoff last week. So I'd expect Dante Johnson to be out there as somewhat of a safety nickel hybrid, because we did see Deshaun Gibson play out of the slot for a couple of snaps. Maybe you have Dante Johnson run in the back end or play some good depth for the 49ers, get those outside and nickelback players some extra rest for the 49ers. So Johnson might be a guy that you might lean on, but regardless, even if Verrett was playing, the one thing I've been saying, whoever it is, the 49ers, that cornerback is going to be tested. Before, it was only one cornerback that was tested for the 49ers. That was the nickelback, be it Womack or Diamondo Lenore, because you had 2 shutdown guys on the outside. Mosley proved, after teams tried to target him early, Mosley proved that he was going to be a hard player to pretty much win against. And he did get beat a couple of times by Cortland Sutton that week. They tried to play that one-on-one matchup, and that's just because Cortland Sutton's a bigger body. But overall, Mosley has been very good. Charvarius Ward, obviously one of the top cornerbacks thus far in the NFL so far. So to me, I think that now you're going to open up a new spot. You've got Diamondo Lenore on the outside, as well as Samuel Womack. The 49ers are going to have to account for 2 different players in how they scheme defenses, because teams now can target an entire half of the field rather than that one player that they were looking for before, which was easier to shut down.
Do you see any schematic changes coming with the possibility, or are you going to kind of still try to run it somewhat the same and kind of leave Diamondor on an island out there?
I think you don't see schematic changes. I honestly think that it'll be a little it'll be similar. You'll have safety help over the top normally. Maybe you play either a little more aggressive towards the line of scrimmage, but a little more conservative on the outside, which 49er fans don't necessarily like that approach, because you'll get those 8-yard gains, 7-8 yard gains.
Mm-hmm.
But Marcus Mariota hasn't been a good quarterback when you're talking about pure quarterbacking. This year, he's thrown for 185.5 yards per game, one of the worst marks in the NFL. Completion percentage isn't there. He's thrown for 57% of his passes.
Under 60,
and the touchdown interception ratio isn't there either. It's 4-4. So he hasn't really been a really good quarterback, albeit you don't have many top options, right? It's Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and they haven't utilized Kyle Pitts as a receiver that much this year compared to last year when he had his monster year. So it is tougher, and that's the one benefit in this specific matchup, because it might be Olamide Zaccheaus going up against Diamondo Lenore on the outside, rather than next week or the week, or sorry, not next week, last week, you might have had Robbie Anderson, a burner, or you might have had DJ Moore on the outside. So it might be a little different in that regard.
Do you think the Niners might make any moves as far as bringing in any corners free agency wise? Maybe bringing back a guy like, I don't even know, is Darqueze Dennard available, or is he on somebody else's team?
Darqueze Dennard is currently available. The 49ers could bring him back. As for a move, I don't think the 49ers are going to make any immediate moves, although I pointed out that the one person I wouldn't be surprised if they signed, by immediate moves, I mean trades, but the one guy that I think that they could sign is Darqueze Dennard, because he's a guy who has familiarity with the system, and he's a guy who they trust, because when you talk about Darqueze Dennard, he came in last year off the practice squad of the New York Giants, I believe. 1.5 weeks later, after coming in off the practice squad with a completely unfamiliar scheme, he was playing meaningful snaps in week 18 in the nickel. So they have a huge trust for him. He's an extremely smart player. And I think that he would be a valuable addition. The only thing is, do they trust him to play on the outside, or do they trust him to play nickelback? Regardless, he'd be a role player, but the 49ers do have a good amount of defensive backs, because Deshaun Gibson, adding him into the mix while Jimmy Ward will likely be back. Maybe not in Kansas City, but probably be back within week 8 if it sounds like he'll play with the club. You have 10 defensive backs already, or now 9 without Emmanuel Mosley, because you have Ambry Thomas, Diamondo Lenore, Samuel Womack, Charvarius Ward. That's 4 there. Then you've got Tarvarius Moore, George Odom, Jimmy Ward, Talanoa Hufanga, and Tashawn Gibson. The 49ers normally run the opposite way. They normally run 5 corners and 4 safeties, which is 9 defensive backs. It's a little bit of a different iteration, but you already have 9. And then the but the addition of Dante Johnson to the mix would make that 10. I wonder, do the 49ers go past that limit and add an extra player as well? So that's the one question as to whether they will. And for the second part, as for a trade, the reason I don't believe that the 49ers will do a trade at least now is because you have that insurance policy in Jason Verrett. Correct.
Right.
He was injured this past week. He did have a little bit of a setback with soreness, but you didn't expect him to be ready this early. You normally expected him to be ready for the second half of the season in case that injury happened. You bring him in, and I think they're going to give him a couple of weeks to get reintegrated before thinking about making any serious changes. And by that time, the trade deadline will be gone. I don't think it's fair to Verrett or fair to your team if you're giving up that early and trying to get another option. Although if it is a top caliber option, I mean, you're not going to complain. But I think they have a plan in which they trust their guys currently.
If you're going to make any move at the deadline, you find a way to bring in Brian Burns. That's the only player that I want to hear about. I want to hear about Christian McCaffrey because he's always hurt.
Okay? You're going to be disappointed by my take then, but continue.
Because I think we're totally on opposite sides, but that's okay. That's the whole point of the discussion. The reason I say him is because, like, I just can't get enough of this pass rush when it's working. I'm weird. I used to be pass happy guy because, you know, I lived through the Montana and the Young era and even somewhat Garcia, where, you know, they threw the ball, man. They threw the TO to JJ Stokes, Jerry Rice, whatever. And then, like, this new age 49er teams, they've never really had that quarterback. So they've always been kind of a run heavy team, even with the Harbaugh years. So, like, I'm cool with running and pass rush causing disruption. I like old school, you know, just like in the dirt football, the high flying stuff with throwing the ball all over the yard. I mean, it's cool and everything, but like, I like physicality. But yeah, he would be the only guy. I mean, Christian McCaffrey to me would be good if he didn't have such a staggering injury history, because you could really do a lot with him as far as like out of the slot, out of the backfield. I mean, you could do anything. He would be very, very dangerous. But I mean, a lot of Niners fans would be clamoring at that idea until he gets hurt. And then they're going to be like, I can't believe we gave up all this stuff to get him because he's injured now. And they always go after injured guys. I mean, you already know what's going to happen as far as that kind of thing. So, like, I'm not saying that they make their decision based on what us fans think, because that was the case, both of them would be fired. But I'm interested to hear, I'm interested to hear what you have to say and what your take would be on that. Even though it's not one of our topics, I wanted to get your mind on possibly like a deadline trade or something.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Burns would obviously be a phenomenal addition. You'd have to make the money work in a way. I think the 49ers have around no. We do not mess with last second sports over here. He called me Polo, man. You call Polo me. You don't call me Polo. I feel sad. No, I'm just kidding. We love Jesse over here.
We love Jesse. Jesse made my intro, my overlay. I have to respect him.
Oh, that's true. It's just semantics at this point, right?
I would have everything would be plain ass if I didn't ask him. So
yeah, I got my work done from Jesse, so I can cut him off now. It's no big deal.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking about that. No, I'm just kidding.
But continuing forward with Brian Burns, I mean, when you talk about a player of his caliber, he's an extremely good player. Like I won't. When you talk about Brian Burns, it's going to take a good amount of capital to get him. But moreover, do you want to go through another contract discussion like we've had over the past couple of seasons with Brian Burns? Because that's what's going to take to sign Brian Burns to a contract extension when you already have Nick Bosa, a player who I believe is in the same class, in that 2019 class, that is going to require an extension as well. And so Brian Burns and Nick Bosa, that's 2 players at a premium position that you have been able to acquire significant talent at that you're going to have to pay on top of already paying Arik Armstead $25 million next year. So
That's
to
true.
me, I think the financials is where it is. And while defensive end is such an important position for the 49ers, and I personally would not be mad if the 49ers traded for Brian Burns, I think that is a part that you have to take into account on top of the draft capital that you trade for him. Instead, what I think the 49ers would do at the trade deadline, if they were to make a move, is trade for a lesser known defensive end or a defensive tackle. Right now, the area in which they've kind of not struggled, but the area in which they are somewhat depleted, surprisingly, is depth. You don't have Arik Armstead, you don't have Javon Kinlaw, and while you do have guys like Harry Hyder, while you do have guys like Charles Omenihu and Samson Ebukam and Kevin Givens and Hassan Ridgeway, that's 5 players I just named. Oh, sorry, and Drake Jackson, don't want to forget him. That's 6 players I just named, but these players might be playing higher snap counts than the 49ers might want, which might tire them for the entirety of the year. I looked at the snap counts today. Charles Omenihu has played over 50% of the snap count on 3 of the 5 games this year, and I think that number reached in the 60% this year. And it's not anything against Charles Omenihu. I think he's played phenomenal this year compared to what was expected of him. I just think that the 49ers might want to insulate themselves for another deep playoff run like they did with Omenihu last year so that they can reap the benefits should other injuries occur and have a guy who can step in and produce 5-6 pressures in a much needed game. I think if they were to make a move, it would be at that position, likely defensive tackle, so that they can have different guys that can operate. But honestly, I think with the way that the 49ers have constructed their roster, I believe they'll stay put overall.
I did see Kamiko Toure get in the game last week. I don't know if you spotted that too.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I mean, he didn't really do much, but I mean, I totally forgot about him as far as like an outside guy. A lot of talk about him, and
he was such a good guy he was really good, especially with that inside spin move in training camp. And he's just like pretty much a non-factor if we're being honest right now. Yeah.
Yeah, if he can get going, kind of like how Ebukam got going last year, kind of like the back half of the season, that'll always be. 49ers always make these like sneaky acquisitions that we don't really understand, or at least a guy like me, you might, because you're a little bit more in tune with stuff like that, and even someone like Jesse too, or a lot of the top content creators. I'm not always. My knowledge isn't always as much on certain guys. So when like something like that happens, and I'm like, who's that Ebukam? And then all of a sudden he turned it on at the end of last year. He's been pretty damn good early this season. So I'm not against being patient with Kamiko Toure, because you never know. Maybe he turns it on. Maybe he gets a 3-4 sacks before the end of the year, and then all of a sudden we have another guy that we can go to in the playoff run if we make it. So yeah, the fan in me would love us to make a move at the deadline, but the adult and the person with the brain thinks probably not going to happen. The Niners just don't do business like that. Mm-hmm. They did it with Emmanuel Sanders. They did it with, I'm trying to, who else was an actor? Was he pretty much?
Omenihu was.
Okay.
But last year. Oh, you're talking about major ones?
Yeah, they're not the Rams. Like, as long as the Rams don't get Brian Burns, totally cool.
It could happen. If we're being honest, it could happen. They'd have to figure out those contract numbers.
What, a 2028 first-round pick? Is that what they're going to go with?
Yeah, like I think they don't have a first this year, but they do next year, and they hate them, right? So might as well ship out your 2024 first-round pick, get something in return.
What did their owners say? F the picks? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He
also said F the offensive line, apparently, because that ain't working for them right now.
What do you make? Again, this isn't one of our topics. What do you make of all the talk of like a lot of people saying, "Oh, I think they're done. The Rams are officially over their reign," because the way they build their roster. To me, every time somebody says that, there's always like a second half push with the team. Anytime me and my brother like see a team that's struggling early in the year that's usually dominant, I'll look at them and I'm go, they're going to come on in the second half. And then sure enough, just like my brother said, the Cardinals were a joke last year and that they were going to get exposed as not being legit. My brother was right. Like, we've seen so much football in our years on this planet that like, there's a whole season. There's so much to go. So like, we'll see. I don't think the Rams are quite done. They might not. I mean, they might have an uninspiring season this year, maybe finishing, like just outside the playoffs, or if they get in, they get bounced early. But I'm not writing anybody off. To me, if we could just win our division this year, I really don't care about what placing we are in the playoffs, because I think we've pretty much shown that we can pretty much
if
go.
you win, you get home court, you get home field advantage for at least a game. That's
Yeah,
good enough.
that's all I want. And if we can do it, because I mean, we proved it last year. I mean, we went on the road to in two places that teams just don't win, and we did pretty damn well. And we almost beat the Rams in their place with 2 minutes to go. We were in that game, so it's not like we got smoked by the Rams at the end. So
Yeah.
I know this isn't part of what we were going to talk about, but
fine.
I just,
But,
my brain is going like 70 different directions right now.
When you talk about the Rams, I think honestly they're just facing the repercussions of what they did. And if I was the Rams, I wouldn't have done it any different way.
Me neither.
The point of the NFL is to get a Super Bowl. The Rams accomplished that mission. They got their Super Bowl ring. Unfortunately, when you build a team in the way that they build a team, there are going to be repercussions, and you are going to reap not only the benefits but also the negative aspect of it as well. And you saw it this year. The Rams lost Von Miller, weren't able to replace him because they couldn't contend with the Buffalo Bills on that contract. And then they don't have the draft capital to acquire a player that could be a replacement for Von Miller because they traded that draft capital for Von Miller. And that's just one example. They lost several key cogs on that offensive line. Obviously, Joe Noteboom, a guy who's been a pretty solid backup, has really struggled initially, at least to replace Andrew Whitworth, has given up, I think, the third most pressures or so in the NFL. You talk about the remainder of that offensive line. David Edwards, their left guard, is currently on IR. Brian Allen is currently their center, but they lost guys in free agency. They lost Austin Corbett to the Carolina Panthers. They lost also another offensive lineman. They lose a good amount of players, right? This offseason, and they weren't able to replace them because you don't have the necessary capital to do so. And so that, in a way, is the repercussions that they're facing, and they're starting to realize how important that offensive line is. I wouldn't count them out because you have Cooper Kupp, you have Matthew Stafford, who I personally believe is a good quarterback. And then defensively, you still have Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd. It's definitely an intriguing team. Obviously, with the signing of Allen Robinson, I'm not a huge fan of the signing of Bobby Wagner. I don't know if it really fit their needs.
No,
but, yeah,
they just did it because they could. That was one of those things. Like, hey, I'm going to flex.
Exactly. But I mean, overall, I think their team is good. I just don't know how good it'll be. That's why I predicted, regardless of who was playing at quarterback, the 49ers would win the division this year.
Yeah, I think the Niners, if they beat the Rams the next time they play them, this division's pretty much. I am not a confident person usually, but if they beat the Rams in their place, this division,
they'll win the division. Yeah,
I think that's a wrap. But I just want to say what's up to somebody that he's been in my chat before, but maybe I haven't seen it, but Niner Fanatic Podcast.
Oh, that's Peter. Yeah, that's my guy. I know him.
I want to say what's up. Anytime I see somebody, maybe you've been in here, or maybe I haven't recognized, or you're new, I'm always going to shout you out. So now I would assume you make content. So now I'm going to have to say another. I do it to myself. I overwhelm myself, and that's another person I have to check out. But that's what I do because I'm interested in always supporting people that do the same thing. So thank you for coming in here. I appreciate it. Yeah, let's jump to what I think is kind of almost, I heard somebody say that about 2019, and then they're saying it about, hold on, okay, there we go. They said in 2019, we had a lot of guys go down, and, our offense kind of stemmed the tide a little bit. I feel like the offense needs to do that again if they can stay relatively healthy. Maybe the offense with the defense losing guys, seemingly every game. But they need to. This is be a good time to kind of start clicking and getting things together. And maybe in some games where the defense maybe just doesn't have enough because of lack of guys, depth or guys going out, the offense needs to step up. It's not like we're bereft of talent. I mean, we got Kittle and Ayuk and Debo and hell, even Juwan Jennings has been looking relatively good. So what's your take? Do you think the offense needs to kind of, pull up their bootstraps and get going here?
I think we saw the first, like, at least an iteration of what the offense could have been last week, right? The 49ers offense finally scored 30 points in a game this season, and it was a good-looking offense that still left several missed opportunities on the board. When you go back and see the film and see the amount of missed opportunities, and when I'm talking about missed opportunities, I'm not only talking about some things between miscommunications between Jimmy Garoppolo and the receivers. I'm talking also about the run game. There were several missed blocks by Jake Brendel at center, which allowed Derek Brown to go and tackle Jeff Wilson Jr. on open holes that you could have probably gotten bigger gains from. And then obviously you could talk about Garoppolo, right? And some miscues there, but also drops by receivers in key situations that forced the 49ers to do something different rather than score a touchdown. But the problem with the 49ers hasn't been the ability to get it done. And when we talk about the 49ers, specifically Garoppolo, right? He's shown an ability to make plays. He's shown an ability to do certain things before. He is limited in the skill set. He can't do everything. The issue with Garoppolo hasn't been the ability to do it, the ability, though, to consistently do it. And what I said earlier today and earlier this week, there's literally one statistic that is the epitome of it. I'm not going to say that it matters that much, but he hasn't gone 3 games in his career without throwing an interception. That is the epitome of inconsistency, in my opinion. And Garoppolo hasn't showcased in his 5-year tenure with the 49ers that he can be consistent in a way that in a fashion that he was on Sunday. So to me, my question is, can the 49ers and can Garoppolo continue to replicate their performance from this past Sunday onto future games and adapt when they need to according to different defenses? Kyle Shanahan has done the first part. He created different looks in the running game. Remember, the running game was flourishing with Trey Lance. Regardless of how you feel about Kyle Shanahan and Trey Lance running, it was working. The running game was clearly clicking on all cylinders in those first 2 games. However, it took but it took a step back when Jimmy Garoppolo came in the helm. Up until the Carolina game, the 49ers were rushing for just 3.5 yards per carry when Jimmy Garoppolo was at quarterback. Then, when you go into the Carolina game, and really it stemmed from the Rams game the week before, you start to see newer concepts incorporated from Kyle Shanahan. The big one was that Zorro, the toss play from Jeff Wilson Jr. in the Rams game, where he cut it back into a wham for a touchdown. Those type of concepts you're now starting to see a little more from Kyle Shanahan. And what does that do? The fake toss now forces the defense to think, is it going to be a toss play or is it going to be a cutback inside? That hesitation allows you to utilize different areas of the field and get different gains. That's how the 49ers are able to get these 7, 8, 9 yard gains. And even though they get stuffed at the line of scrimmage times, they're averaging 5 yards a carry. And so to me, it's the consistency, not only at quarterback, but can that happen with the offensive line, the running game, and the play calling? All 4 facets. We haven't seen that in the Garoppolo era in the 5 seasons that Jimmy Garoppolo has been at quarterback. But if he can continue to show the tendencies that he showed on Sunday, I think we got a good you got a good shot. But that hasn't happened.
Platform 246 says James can't do it. He doesn't believe. Listen, I will be honest with you. When I watch Garoppolo, when I watch 49er games, I do watch with the inevitable in my mind of the other shoe dropping, as so to speak, because he's done it so many times over and over and over again, where he'll start to be like, well, maybe Garoppolo's kind of turning the corner here. And then he goes full Garoppolo. And you're just like, okay, never mind. And he does it within games too. Like he'll look good on one drive where Kyle's scripting it. And then he'll come out the next drive and dude will like try to submarine the game by throwing a pick to a linebacker or a corner. I mean, on plays where like there wasn't even a second option. It's like he's staring the guy down the whole time. And that's the part that 49er fans, other than injuries, always worrying injuries are going to happen at some point, is the Garoppoloisms, just the stupid stuff, like the stuff that is so common with him. And a lot of people out there who, do the same things that a lot of us do, like they think it's hating or their sides being taken. And really it comes down to just, it's on film. It's there to be seen. We've all seen it before. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I saw really damn good quarterback play, and 49er fans have become very okay with mediocrity. And it's like, to know where we came from to where we are now, we just have an expectation of what the quarterback position should be. So I'm not hating on Jimmy. He's my quarterback right now, and I hope he does well. But I'm not going to lie and say that I don't watch games and be like, okay, this is guys, he's ready to tank it. So, you are muted, my man.
Well, good, because you didn't hear one word that I said.
Oh, okay. It looks like somebody walked behind you in the locker room over there.
Yeah, nah, we good.
Tommy Huxley with the $2 super. He says Carolina defense, Atlanta defense. Okay.
That's an intriguing take. I mean, I personally agree. My co-host on my podcast yesterday, Marco, disagrees. He believes Atlanta's better. And I can say Atlanta's offense was better, and I can say Carolina's defense is better. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just watching a little like preview of like the game from, I don't know if it's like NFL Films, and one of the things they were talking about is just the thing that really submarines them is just they have poor quarterback play. He's just not really that good. They have some players on offense that can make that could maybe create some mismatches, but when the quarterback is the weakness, it kind of cancels that out. Do you kind of look at it the same way, though? Like they have some skill guys, but having Mariota as your single caller kind of cancels all that out?
I think they've got an intriguing group of different things. I think they've got an intriguing play caller in Arthur Smith. I also think they have an intriguing running game. Cordero Patterson was one of the most efficient runners in general. He averaged 5.9 yards per carry when he was playing. He got unfortunately got injured, I believe, in week 3 or week 4. But the offense really hasn't taken a step back in the running game. Tyler Algier, they're number 1 now, and Caleb Huntley both have combined alongside Mariota, and that rushing attack is still averaging 5.1 yards per carry. There's still a fairly strong rushing attack, and it's not like they're afraid to run the ball. Against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week, they were down 21-0 or 21-7, one of the two. They came back, they lost 21-15, but they ran the ball 31 times. Even if the game script doesn't favor it, they're not going to shy away from the run. They want to be a physical team. They want to pound on you. And so to me, I think that the 49ers should be prepared for that run game, because that offense, yeah, it is predicated on that run game. And while Mariota certainly has his flaws as a passer, I'm not the biggest Marcus Mariota fan. I'm not going to say that he should be starting for several teams in the NFL or something, but his threat as a runner, I think, adds a good amount as well to that offense.
The Niners have shown a little bit of being susceptible to that interior rushing game too. So like that could play in Atlanta's favor if they can consistently get some interior running going. The Niners, I don't know if it's a side effect of that wide 9 defense where like the interior always seems to be an issue. I mean, the Niners really don't have that Michael Carter, that nose tackle that can kind of really cause the run game to have issues. They will get gouged from here and there. So if a team gets away with it and can be successful at it, that could be one thing that I could see that they could get on the Niners, is like you said, the ability to run the football.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about this game specifically, it's a potential trap game, because when you look at the 49ers defensive line, right? You said it earlier in the show, it's injured right now. You're not going to have Javon Kinlaw. You're not going to have Arik Armstead. And Nick Bosa is a game-time decision. I personally expect him to play, but he might not play. And if there is no Nick Bosa, if you have Charles Omenihu and Samson Ebukam, the entire script of the game changes. Originally, Nick Bosa is the one who takes the double teams, which creates opportunities for his teammates. The space eaters up the middle will take double teams. Nick Bosa takes double teams, leaving one-on-one opportunities for certain players and different stunt and blitz patterns that create free rushers to go at quarterbacks from D'Amico Ryans. No Nick Bosa means that the productivity for other players is going to go down, because they are now attracting more attention. You're going to see double teams maybe on Charles Omenihu. You might see double teams on Samson Ebukam, whereas you saw them originally on Nick Bosa. And so the 49ers are now going to have to think of different ways. And the underrated aspect is him as a run defender, right? You're not going to have his presence as a run defender anymore. And so what are you going to do against the run? How are you going to scheme different ways? Are you going to put Kerry Hyder at edge? What's the different solution at the run? the 49ers have been the number one run defense in the NFL. And contrary to the interior struggles from before, I don't think that those have translated to this year because Kevin Givens and Hassan Ridgeway have done a phenomenal job defending against the run, while the linebacker, like they've done a phenomenal job at least plugging the holes, allowing the linebackers to come in and secure the tackle. So to me, I think that it's like a combination of factors, but the loss of Nick Bosa should certainly be something that will make this matchup intriguing if that ends up happening.
Just want to say thank you to Niner Game podcast. You know, I've gotten so many compliments on this hat. It was out on I think it was on the New Era website last year, and I thought it looked super fresh. So I appreciate the compliment. A lot of people are, before I get to my thoughts on Bosa and maybe sitting him, again, this wasn't on the docket. What is your opinion on Kinlaw? Do you think Kinlaw's donezo? You think it's looking like maybe this might be one of those things that the 49ers might need to eventually move on from?
Now, I'm not a doctor, so I can't necessarily speak to the I think it's degenerative health. I can't necessarily speak to that. I'll speak to Kinlaw as a player, though. He in my opinion, he's a good player. When he's healthy, he's a clear difference maker for the 49ers, and he's got a higher potential than DJ Jones. However, potential is potential. You won't reach that potential if you're consistently injured. And unfortunately, Javon Kinlaw has continuously seen irritation in his knee. He's had ACL reconstruction surgery, but he's also had knee issues, be it knee tendonitis or the issues that he's faced since college. That was a red flag coming into the 2020 NFL draft, and the 49ers drafted in many ways, understanding the repercussions. Currently, they're facing those repercussions. I wish all the best to Javon Kinlaw. I think he's a good player when he plays, but there have been health concerns, and there were flags before the draft that were clearly understandable when you go into the draft process. So it is an up and down kind of reasoning with Javon Kinlaw, because you like the player, but is the risk worth the reward? Right now, that question is still yet to be determined, and Javon Kinlaw's in his third season. The biggest thing now with Kinlaw, you've got a fifth-year option that you don't. What are the 49ers going to do? This decision might have been easier a couple of years ago. Many teams might pick up this decision and say, let's roll the dice. But we've now seen the era of teams getting stuck with these fully guaranteed fifth-year contracts being untradeable. I know it's happened more so with quarterbacks, right? But now you've got a fifth-year option that's fully guaranteed for a first-round pick. That's about $8 million or so, probably, maybe even $10 million on the books for the 49ers that they can't do anything about that contract for a player that has been injured. Again, we've seen them time and time again try and ride their way through these injuries. Dee Ford with being the prime example. He was on this team for probably longer than he should have been, with the hope that he could be the player that he is when he's healthy. We'll see what happens with Javon Kinlaw, but right now, obviously the prognosis isn't looking good. Hopefully he has a good bounce back to the season, and it's truly just some expected setbacks from the ACL reconstruction surgery. But to this point, it seemed like it was looking good. And Kyle Shanahan, though, unfortunately said, we expected this to happen. And so I'll see what happens.
What does that even
I don't
mean?
think, yeah, it's an interesting topic, but overall, I don't think the 49ers are going to hurt from it. Kevin Givens is a starting caliber 49ers defensive lineman. He can start on several other teams in the NFL. So I don't think the 49ers will hurt for it, but yeah, the Kinlaw situation is certainly one that requires a lot of thought.
Want to say what's up to Ty Alston, always in the chat, always supporting. Want to say hi to my boy Ryan from No Border Sports, part of the NWO panel on Monday. I just want to say hello to those guys. David McNew, I were you in here earlier? Well, if you weren't, hello, my man. How you doing? Just wanted to say what's up. It's weird, man, because I think I might have been listening to Jesse, or he might have put it on Twitter about people who deal with degenerative knee issues or whatever, and some of the side effects from it. And he pretty much was saying, like, I don't know if he deals with something with his knee. I'm not sure if Jesse. I think that's what I was gathering from it, but he doesn't see it as a good sign because he sees a lot of the signs that. And a lot of the symptoms that are going on with Javon Kinlaw, he has with himself, and it has to do with I don't know, people who ended up having arthritis in their knees. So like if that's the case, like
Yeah.
the Niners went into this. I don't blame Kinlaw. Again, I thought he was kind of an idiot what he did in the offseason, but that's whatever. I blame the organization. You had the medicals on this guy, and to draft him top 15, a top 15 guy should be more than a space heater. He should be a disruptor. He should be a pass rusher. He should be, not the second coming of Warren Sapp, but comparable to what DeForest Buckner was. And he hasn't touched that. And you could say it's the injuries. You could say it's whatever. All I know is that the Niners, like you said, they're coming up on this contract thing. I'll be honest with you, bro. If he doesn't really show marked signs of improvement by the end of this year,
oh, that's declined then for sure.
You got to decline that option.
With the way I think this is intriguing. I honestly, if I'm the 49ers, my stance might change at the end of the year. Obviously, depending on how Javon Kinlaw plays. Because if he has like a second half resurgence like Samson Ebukam had last year, my stance will certainly change. But right now, I'm declining the option with the way that the 49ers develop these defensive linemen and are able to consistently produce better defensive linemen. Kinlaw has high potential, like I said, but if that potential can never be reached, are you going to spend a premium on it when you're going to spend a premium on Ark Armstead and Nick Bosa? I don't know if that's the solution. I think it's better to continue recycling these defensive linemen, especially when you can find undrafted gems year in and year out.
Potential gets people fired if that was a different situation. So let's jump back to the other side of the ball. Are we going to be seeing Ty Davis-Price soon? Tevin Coleman, what the hell was that last week? Where did that come from? And Jeff Olson Jr. Let's tackle. I want to tackle Tevin Coleman first.
Yeah, I mean, Tevin Coleman's a very intriguing case. And this is like the most Kyle Shanahan thing possible, right? Bringing a guy in off the street, trusting him over your rookie, and then just starting him. Or, I mean, not starting him, but playing him in a role. I think this just most reminds me, we talked about Denard earlier. You had several rookie options in Ambry Thomas and Diamondo Lenore to start in the nickel last year, who had much more experience with your system than Darqueze Denard, and yet they brought a guy off the street and played him 1.5 weeks later in the most crucial game of the year. This is just in a way, it's a Kyle Shanahan thing, and the problem is you can't blame him because it works. Last year it worked. This year it worked. I mean, Tevin Coleman just rejuvenated himself. He just somehow came down with a 30-yard catch. Just in a way, he's something different. I like the addition though. With what he showed on Sunday, I like the addition, and it's actually because of what I just saw in the comment section with Bashar. Outside zone. The 49ers have struggled with that outside zone at times this year because Jeff Wilson Jr., while he's been a great running back, and I have actually given him my praise, I think he's been very solid for the 49ers after not showing that much in training camp. Tevin Coleman is the only running back right now that's healthy that can give you the outside zone. Jeff Wilson Jr. doesn't have the requisite speed, and Tyrion Davis-Price doesn't. He has short burst, but I don't know if he has the requisite pure on speed to hit that outside zone. Coleman, though, showcased the ability to do that against the Carolina Panthers, and that is what opens up this running game to be really more dynamic, especially if you only have Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, a guy who doesn't run the football. So, to me, I think he does provide something different, and if he can be a reliable pass catcher out of the backfield, that's another thing the 49ers could use. Obviously, you want Kyle Juszczyk to kind of be that guy, but he's another guy in that can be utilized in that role.
It looked like he, like Ty Elson was saying, he had fresh legs last week.
I mean, he don't play. Like to me.
Yeah,
he's straight off the street. He do not play.
Yeah,
so
he
better have fresh legs.
He looked fresh and lively. There was that one play up the sideline where he wiggled on somebody and then cut it back inside, and I was just like, ooh. I make audible noises when I watch games sometimes where nobody's around, when like guys do, like somebody getting crossed over, where the dude who got crossed over trips over his own feet and falls backwards. He did something last week where I was just like, whoa. That was a nice play. So I hope Kyle doesn't abuse him, and maybe he has a nice mix between the two. Jeff Olson Jr. It's weird, man. Like, I've always been a big proponent for him. I've always liked him a lot, but he doesn't have that speed. Like you said, he looked fantastic last week. I don't know how much of that. Yeah. I don't know how much of that is, going who we were going against, because I heard they had some players on that Carolina defense, but he looked fantastic. He hits that hole with a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Explosiveness, but also like he's
Vision.
sure. He's sure.
Vision.
He doesn't stagger.
He's a downhill runner. He's just decisive. Yeah.
He's not fast though, because that one where he went down the sideline and he gained like 40 yards, man, he was dog slow, but it was still a beautiful run. Like if that would have been Mostert, he's gone. See ya, bye.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Same thing with what's his name that we had on the team a couple years ago, the little guy.
Matt Breida?
Yeah, that would have been a touchdown, no doubt. So, but at the same time, I mean, a 40-yard gain's a 40-yard gain. So, it looks like TDP. It looks like Kyle just doesn't trust young guys at certain positions to make plays. He is a person. He likes his old faithfuls, the guys he went to war with, his soldiers. He doesn't like. You really have to earn your way onto the field, and like any mistake sets you back like ages, so
yeah.
I hope to see TDP at some point, but I don't know if that's going to be happening anytime soon.
And I mean, I think they should play Jordan Mason. That's been my case. It's funny because I write my article, I'll give the grade for the running back room, and then every week at the bottom of my article I have this one line that's like my thoughts. I should say I wish they play Jordan Mason in the way that I write it. To me, here's what I think. I think when you look at it from a fan perspective, you can be irate, right? Because fans in a way want to be irate when you're talking about the 49ers, and they prefer to see the flashy players. Tyron Davis-Price is a 3rd round pick. He's a flashy player. Jordan Mason is a preseason standout. He's a flashy player. Tevin Coleman is an old running back who has been cut by several teams and recently played for the New York Jets. That is not a flashy player, but in Kyle Shanahan's system, it works. So to me, I don't really care as long as the product is continuing to work. If it's continuing to be consistent. Jeff Wilson Jr. is not my favorite running back in the NFL. I don't know if he's anybody's favorite running back in the NFL because he just doesn't have the requisite traits that a lot of other running backs do. But in this system, here's what's required. Can you identify the hole? Can you be able to change your run, your route, or the way that you run if that hole is no longer present? And when you find that hole, can you hit that hole and run downhill? Jeff Wilson Jr. clicks all of those boxes. He has for the last 3 weeks. And I think that those 3 are requisite in this offense. This offense is not really predicated on running backs. This offense is predicated on the offensive line blocking and the tight ends blocking. That's why George Kittle, while so many people are irate, I love the way the 49ers use George Kittle because he's so fun to want. He's so fun to watch in the running game. No, you won't see it on TV, but when you go back and watch it, he is so good in the running game. And so to me, I think George Kittle, not George Kittle, I think this 49ers offense just works the way that it does because the offensive lineman and the scheme and the way that it's play designed is just a great way to utilize those running plays. And so to me, whoever's out there, so far the product has worked. And so that's why I don't have as many necessarily irate thoughts towards Kyle Shanahan, even though I'd prefer to see Jordan Mason, a guy who has accomplished something every time he's gotten the football out there.
I heard something on the broadcast last week, and it's something that I always believe in too, is that the 49ers got to learn the 49ers got to learn to get other players involved other than their old faithfuls, their Debos, their Kittles. Like, I want to see more Ayuk. I want to see more Juwan Jennings. I want to see more Ray McLeod or whatever. Like, you have to put yourself in a position that if somebody's not playing, you know that you can go to other people. That's the one thing about Kyle when he gets stuck on guys. And Platform 246 said it best. He's an abuser. He does tend to run guys into the ground. And I know his dad did the same thing. You go to the guys that you have faith in, that you know that will perform in pressure situations. That's like any job. If you're going to give a task on a deadline, you're not going to get it to some guy who's a 2-week rookie. You're going to get it to the guy who's been there for 30 years, who at any point you can go and be like, yo, listen, I need this. The deadline's like in 2 days, and they come through every time. So I get Kyle's apprehension, but I just wish, other guys would get opportunities just so you know what you got, so that in the case of something happening, you're not be like, oh my God, we have no answer for this. We're screwed. I'll be like, no, we saw him. He had 6-8 runs in that last game. He looks good to go. Or so and so, yeah. They took Debo out of the game, and so was able to make plays and do this and that. Like I want to be. That's the thing. I want to see it. So like down the road, if God forbid Debo gets injured, which the way he plays, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. I would. I don't know. I just want to see other guys get involved for the simple fact that I want to know what I got. But
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Like Kyle goes with the guys that he's gotten there, or Kyle goes with the guys that have gotten him there before. So I don't see it changing, at least not this year.
Yeah, and the one other thing that I want to point, just a little pushback on going to the other guys. I think regardless of who he goes to, people are going to be unhappy. Last week, George Kittle got only 2 more targets. Jack Hammer pointed this out. People were so happy because George Kittle was like, he normally gets 4 targets. He got 6 targets in this last game. People were happy because they just saw him do things with the ball, right? And so the point I'm trying to make, the 49ers aren't a pass-first offense, and they can't be with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm. The 49ers are a run-first offense, which means running backs who, unfortunately, Jeff Wilson Jr. and Tevin Coleman aren't as flashy as the other playmakers, are going to get the ball more. And so that means there's limited amount of opportunity elsewhere. So if Brandon Ayuk is going to be the featured receiver, yeah, we'll be happy for Brandon Ayuk, but there's going to be a select few who are unhappy that Deebo Samuel didn't get the ball, or George Kittle didn't get the ball, or Jawan Jennings or Kyle Juszczyk. The fact of the matter is there are several options that can work when their number is called, and that's why this offense is as prolific as it is, because while not one player might shine out every single game, or not the same player might shine out every single game, when they need that player to work, that player can work because of the way that they utilize their different receivers and skill position players.
What is your, as we transition here, what do you make of this thing with the Niners when they, take an East Coast trip and they have maybe like a back-to-back deal going on? They're staying in West Virginia. I know they stayed somewhere else.
Yeah, the Greenbrier.
Youngstown, I think they've stayed before.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that? I mean, it seems to work. Well, what is it about them staying on the East Coast and camaraderie and not traveling that gets them to somehow, for the most part, come away from the East Coast usually with 2 wins if it's a 2-game stretch?
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, what's their tangible that you can grab from that, or has it just been a series of luck?
I think in a way they're trying to create the same routine. When you're at home and then you're going on the road, you're going to practice in San Francisco and then travel on the road midweek or towards the end of the week for your game. In a way, they found themselves a new home, one that they're comfortable with, and one where the conditions are applicable to their needs, and that's in West Virginia. I mean, I don't know why it'll be in West Virginia. Kyle Shanahan has his reasons, but it's in West Virginia. And in a way, it's a way for them to create that routine, continue to work as if they are working coming off a home game to an away game, and keep that same mentality rather than being shook that, it's an away game. You gotta prepare differently because you're traveling or whatever. They keep that same mentality and they keep a routine, and it's worked thus far. There's some secret sauce to it, but I think it's just them trying to keep a routine, which in a way normally would keep guys more healthy. Ironically, the 49ers don't remain very healthy normally, but I think that could be a part of the reasoning why.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, what is the old saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I don't want to just, hey, whatever it takes. You're right, though. It doesn't, when it comes to injuries, that this, for some reason, this rule doesn't apply. It'll get us wins, but usually it takes a couple guys with us. One last thing that I thought needed to be addressed, and that was the 49ers special teams. They've been pretty god-awful this year, other than a couple games. I mean, couple block kicks, just the coverage in the last game that got Robbie Gould injured. Like, a lot of people are saying it felt like Hightower was back as our special teams coordinator. Are you sure he's not on the sideline? Like, what the hell's going on, man? Is it just a blip, or is there some telltale signs that things might be going awry?
I think there actually is reason for optimism. It's one player, And he's not going to solve every problem because he can't solve the block kick problem. But it's Tarvarius Moore. And what do I mean by this? The 49ers actually ranked very highly in the first 3 weeks in special team rankings. They were one of the better teams in I think it was average field position. They were third, allowing just like 21 or 22 yards in average field position in general. And so the 49ers, they're pretty good in that ranking when you talk about average field position. And so to me, I thought that I tried to figure out the big part of the reason. They had 2 strong gunners, George Odom and Tarvarius Moore. Now, Tarvarius Moore went down with a hamstring injury before week 4, hasn't played the last 3 weeks. And so I think that has also been somewhat of a concern that he hasn't played the last 3 weeks. He is now slated to return. As a result, the 49ers special team statistics has dipped over the last few weeks, but I think that they will improve now over the next at least over the we'll see, but I think that they should improve now that he's returned. It's only one player, but I do think that it'll make a good fix.
Just had to go there. Total dad joke. Low tower, not high tower. Haha. I guess did we lose him? Oh, there he is.
We're good.
All right. I guess the last part here would be predictions. I mean, I would assume both of us are going with the 49ers win here. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
What's your final score? I have always an idea in mind, but I'll let you go first.
I'll go score prediction. I said this the other day, and I think I'm going to stick with it. 49ers 24, Atlanta 13. I don't think the 49ers reached the 30-point mark they reached the last week, but I think their defense continues to remain pretty dominant just because Marcus Mariota isn't as good of a passer. And I think that they're going to hold Atlanta to just 13 points. I think the offense might have a little bit of an initial struggle. We've seen that in a couple of weeks, right? Where they've only scored maybe 7 or 10 points in the first half before turning it up in the second half. I think you might see something similar. I think you win 24-13.
It's pretty much my score prediction as well. I think maybe 1 touchdown and a couple field goals for Atlanta, and the Niners, they get a touchdown and a couple of touchdowns here and there, and then they, maybe they knock one on late with a field goal. And this is definitely not. I think this isn't going to be a sexy game, just because I think the offense really hasn't proven so far that they can really. I mean, they did well against Carolina, but one of those touchdowns was an interception return for a touchdown. So we got to remember that. So if the offense can show me something this week, maybe they come out against Atlanta and they look like world beaters and they win a lot easier. But between that and the injuries on defense and maybe Nick Bosa not playing, I'm optimistic that they'll win, but I'm going to be kind of like, I'm not going to go crazy with like predictions of like, yeah, we're going to beat them 45-3. Like it's just, I don't see that. First of all, our offense isn't that explosive. And 2, I mean, we're missing, we could be missing all 4 starters on the defensive line. So gotta be realistic. You got to think with your brain and not your heart sometimes when it comes to predictions and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much where I got it too. So, well, I think we did all right tonight. We missed Amin. I hope he had a good time at the wedding. I hope he's not drinking at his age. He's only 15. Wait till you're like at least 16 before you start drinking. And I just want to say thanks to everybody in the chat. My old regulars are always here. Like I said, since I've come back to YouTube, I took a break. My live streams, nobody watches me anymore, but my regulars are always in here, and that's really what matters. So I'm not going to shut it down if I don't have 50 viewers. If I can get my normal guys in here and we could all yuck it up and have a good time, that's all that really matters. I don't really care. Matters. I've been having more fun since I've come back and just stopped worrying about stupid stuff and just getting along with everybody and like collaborating with people that actually, like we respect each other mutually, and it's not like me begging somebody to collaborate kind of thing. So it's been good. It's been fun. I just want to say thank you again to everybody. And I hope everybody has a good night. And I hope the 49ers win on Sunday, and Monday we could talk about it on the NWO show. And I hope to soon do something with Rohan again when he is able. This man is a busy man. He's a college student. So I take what I can get here. All right, everybody.
Appreciate you, man.
Everybody have a great night. I will talk to you guys later. Rohan, thank you so much. And until next time, guys, I'll see you on the flip side. Peace.